Hey everyone, my name is Eric Brinkman. I'm the Director of Product for the Dev section. And today we're going to review the Dev strategy, which is a public facing document located on our handbook. And so I'm going to share my screen and start the agenda by essentially walking through the page for the first 5 or 10 minutes of the meeting. Then we'll just get into questions and discussion. Okay, can everyone see my screen? Awesome, thank you for the thumbs up. So this page is located in our handbook at /direction/dev. And just to kind of level set the format of the page, this is a format that's pretty consistent with the other sections. So both CI/CD and Ops have these pages, and then Secure and Enablement are working on these pages. They'll be coming soon. And then just to give you kind of an overview of the format. Essentially, there's an overview of the dev section. There's some market information, some links out to the team, a quick SWOT analysis, and I think the other departments have just challenges, not a SWOT analysis. And then the plan gets into kind of these 3-year vision chunks, which will largely shape the strategy for the next 3 years, and then specifically gets into what we'll be doing for 1 year. And lastly, below the 1-year plan is kind of where evergreen information goes for the different stages in the section. So we've deprecated the stage direction pages and group direction pages. So from an information architecture perspective, the only kind of strategy pages that will exist, at least for this iteration, is the section strategy page and then category strategy pages. So we've kind of cut out the middle organizational pages there to kind of streamline the information. So that's the flow of the page. Let me run through some of this information because I think it's pretty interesting info. So obviously Dev, for those watching who may not be super familiar with how we structure our organization, is made up of the first 3 stages of the DevOps lifecycle. So that's manage, plan, and create. And this gives us a really wide scope, which puts us in a number of analyst categories that we have to play in. So this ranges from things like VSM, project portfolio management, what Gartner calls enterprise agile planning tools, source code management, IDEs, design management, and even ITSM to some extent for our plan features. And because we have such a wide range of scope, it's kind of hard to truly estimate our total addressable market for the dev section, but I've given it my best shot. We know in 2018 that $5.2 billion was spent on DevOps software. And that's going to grow to about 15 billion in 2023, which is a 26.5% CAGR. And if we take a look at kind of how that spend was broken out, based on the reports that we can find, roughly estimated that about half of the overall DevOps software spend, you can kind of peg to the various pieces of functionality that we have in the dev section. And so I've kind of estimated what we believe our TAM to be right now is around 3 billion in revenue on a yearly basis. We think that's going to grow to about 7.5 billion in 2023. So that's just for dev. Doesn't include anything downstream, doesn't include anything CI/CD, ops, or security related. So that's a pretty nice TAM if we just look at the first 3 stages. So that's great. The other interesting data that we have here is our SMAO data, which indicate that manage and create have the highest usage amongst all GitLab stages. And so that makes a lot of sense because most people think of GitLab as a source code management tool first and foremost, and then they kind of branch out left and right. So most people come to GitLab and they purchase it for either source code management and some of the code review workflows that we have, or CI, or a combination of those two. And then people will largely branch out left and right from there. And so that's why we think that most of the improvements that we're making to the plan stage will be really more focused on kind of expansion and not as a key kind of point of entry for the sales team. I'm going to skip over the SWOT section for now, and I'm just going to highlight some of the vision themes and go through the plan, and then we'll jump into the agenda. So there's some high-level themes that we see happening in the market, and I've worked with a number of people on this call to help define and refine these. So I'll just quickly walk through them. The first is efficient automated code review. We already have a lovable product in code review, but I think code review, based off of speaking with a number of you and where we think the market's going, is going to become or should become more efficient and more automated. We have great tools in place for code review, but we don't have great um, helpers available for code review. And what I mean by that is we don't direct the code reviewer to specific places in the diff. We don't do any sort of tying together maybe server side or client side evaluation into code review. We want to make this process a lot more streamlined. We still view code review as a very collaborative process, so we don't want it to be fully automated. We want it to be more efficient, and so this is kind of where we see this is going over the next 3 years. So this means that we're going to have to focus on loading multi-file diffs faster, providing tailored insights into the code reviewer, and then I think allowing for better client and server side eval when people are actually coding to understand the changes that they're making. And then you could also talk about performance testing, so getting into some of the CI categories as well here to understand the performance implication of a change. So a pretty important theme. Value stream management is one of those things that is very nascent in the market, and it's nascent because there's just not really a leader out there. And a lot of product strategy things, you can typically follow a leader, or at least understand what they're doing and then maybe iterate and do it a little bit better. There's no one out there for value stream management that's considered a leader. There are thought leaders, but they're not backing that leadership up with revenue and actual tangible business results at this point in time. And largely that's because most VSM tools have to integrate into data sources, and it becomes like an integration nightmare project, which is an opportunity for us because we have the data for most of the DevOps lifecycle for our customers. And so where we see value stream management going is to answer these two questions: is my DevOps transformation working, and am I doing the right things? So we'll be focused on from a high level features and functionality, enabling our customers to answer those two questions. DevOps for more personas should not be something that's necessarily new to anyone on this call, but there's a ton of other personas out there that touch the DevOps lifecycle other than developers and operators. So it's product managers, project managers, product designers, finance, marketing, procurement, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Essentially everyone at GitLab touches the DevOps lifecycle in some way. And we want to make the experience better for each of those personas. So obviously investments in the plan for project management, some of our design management features for product designers, and improvements into making the GDK work right out of the box from the application is something that we've talked about, which is I think going to be a cool change if we can make that happen. Enterprise digital transformation. Right now, we've kind of taken this. We've taken a convention over configuration approach, and we're not changing that. But that's caused us to make some decisions that don't necessarily work for some of our bigger, more strategic enterprise customers. So we're kind of going to take a look at where do we need to add some customization and custom features, and we think that's probably in workflows and permissions and maybe some of the audit features. So and then over the next 3 years, we don't see that this is going to go away. And then I think there's going to be a big shift in the next 3 years on project management, and that a lot of those tasks that a project manager was doing will be either replaced by tools or will morph into product management. This is a really interesting idea that I think we have a really cool opportunity to be a leader in, which is answering this question: is this product or feature I just launched successful? So imagine an experience where maybe an issue that tracked a feature morphs into a different sort of object that could track all of the information that a product manager might want out of that feature to understand if that feature was successful. So things like what version the feature is, has it been iterated on, are there any security incidents, what's the customer feedback, what are the analytics, can we quickly do an A/B test of this feature? So I think there's a ton of opportunity here in this space, and no one's really attacking it. And I think that it would be something interesting for us. I'm going to skip the 3-year strategy. These are kind of just market shift things, and I'm going to spend a little bit more time on the 1-year plan. And I'm not going to read each of these, but I will just summarize them very quickly. these are the things I think that the team, obviously, we think that we need to focus on over the next 12 months. So within manage, we have to make our product more enterprise ready. So this includes continued investments into some of the SSO and authentication features. It includes continued investments into some of our compliance features to help customers audit and to track compliance of both GitLab and their own applications. And then providing a great import experience as well. So this is what the entire focus and purview of the import team is going to be, which is importing from some of our competitors' tools. I skipped over this one, so I'm going back to it. I also want to lower time to production for our customers. I think we can do this by iterating on some of the analytics in the application, but also by providing potentially raw data to our customers via event streaming or whatnot. This is a large topic at the CAB, and I think that we'll continue to iterate on this moving forward. In plan, there's a lot here to unpack, so I'm going to go through this very quickly, and then we can discuss it later on. We want to make boards a lot better. So this means that we want our boards to essentially be the primary interface where people will work out of plan features, document editing capabilities, real-time boards so that we can all look at the same thing at the same time without reloads, first-class checklists, quick filters, just making boards much better and kind of easy to use is going to be a focus for the team. We want to be able to import from Jira without losing required data. Right now, if you imported a project from Jira, you would lose a ton of data because we don't have the different constructs that Jira has. This does not mean that we're going to one-to-one replace every feature that Jira has, but we do want to be able to let customers migrate to GitLab planning features if they so choose to. The next three I'm going to kind of lump into the same bucket, which is just enhancing the overall portfolio management experience inside of GitLab. So investments into roadmaps, making those actual roadmaps that someone could quickly use and start. You could start with a roadmap that's blank, do top-down planning, create a roadmap object, associate it with some sort of theme, and then create all of the issues, epics and issues, and link all those together very, very seamlessly. Right now, that is very difficult to do. You have to lots of copy and pasting, and we want to make that better. And of course, provide dashboarding and analytics through that experience. So understanding capacity of teams and projects and providing that up to people who are using our portfolio management features. And the last one on plan is requirements management. We've talked about this for a long time. We're starting to get traction on the MVCs coming in 12.6, the ability to create requirements and getting some of the use cases and planning features inside of GitLab ready for some of these regulated industries, going to be super important. So I'm excited for that as well. And then lastly, in Create, we threw this theme out there. In general, we want things inside the application to be more real-time. Some of the areas we're thinking about are the Web IDE for live coding experiences, real-time editing of issues, MR, descriptions, comments, so that the application just feels more collaborative in general. Obviously, we already mentioned boards above for real-time as well. Gitly HA is going to be a big theme for us. It's going to take the next 6 to 12 months to get there fully and completely, but a huge cornerstone of our strategy. Talked about enhancing the code review experience over the next 3 years. So we have to make significant progress in the next 12 months. We're going to do this by, adding jump to definition, identifying references, displaying function documentation, essentially making the code review process more like an IDE experience inside the app. Investing into some of the large file changes that we've already been working on. Investing into our wiki product by making a slow drip of improvements. We actually are starting that in 12.5 here by doing a research issue on making the wiki available at the group level, and then enhancing our markdown support. After that, we'll see how it goes, but if we can do those things in the next, say, 3 to 6 months, I think that would be a great start to getting people to use our wiki again. Enabling easier contributions to GitLab. The GDK is difficult to set up locally, and it's cumbersome, and it usually takes, at least GitLab team members, it usually requires them to pair with another senior person on the team to get that fully working locally. We think it'd be a really cool experience if the web IDE let you connect to a GDK locally through a terminal, completely set up and managed via configuration, and some of the configuration files stored, in version control. And so we want to allow our contributors to quickly spin up feature branches. It's been difficult for PMs and I think product designers to spin up feature branches to see how something looks before it gets shipped to production. So we want to make that experience easier. And then of course, we want to make our editor experience better. We've taken a look at some container-based solutions like Thea that would allow for just a better experience in general for some of the client server-side evaluation, some of the live coding features. We're continuing to iterate on that strategy, but we know that experience needs to become better. And I don't think the goal there anymore is to replace an IDE. I think when we first set off on this journey a few years ago, maybe it was. I think it's been proven that that's not the goal, but we should have an experience for people that do want some sort of power user editor in the product if they so desire. Just a quick highlight into what we're not planning on doing this year. And remember, this does not mean that we're not going to ever do it, but it doesn't mean that. It means that it's not a priority for the next 12 months. So the first thing is investment into features that help companies answer, am I doing the right activities? This is not something that we believe we'll have the data model for at this point in time, but we'll focus on years 2 and 3 of the VSM plan. There's been a lot of talk around treating ML models as first-class citizens inside of GitLab in terms of version controlling them. We want large files to become performant first. And once this is completed, we'll focus on ML models and providing recommendations where customers can improve efficiency. We're not going to do that right now. That's going to require an engine that we don't have, and it's going to require better data from all of our instances that we likely don't have right now as well. So that is, in general, a review of kind of the big themes that we're going to focus on. And now we can move over to the agenda. So Tim.
Can I just quickly jump in and say, this is really exciting, Eric. You did such a great job of walking through that. And this is stuff that, I don't know, I'm very excited as a GitLab user. So this is real cool.
Thank you, Christy. I appreciate that. Christopher, Tim, are you actually here? I know you've got a sick kid at home.
Yes, I have a sick kid, but I am here and I'm listening. So I put a lot of async discussion points together. But yeah, let's get started on the first thing. There was now you scroll down.
Sorry.
Sorry. Over the next year, dev will require focus on both breadth and depth activities. Do you have any sense where we want to set the priorities, how we want to balance that whole thing? Because of course you can't, do we want to do it 50-50? Do we want to go very wide? What's your feeling? I just want to get like a better understanding of that.
Yeah, I think the handbook guidance is 70-30 split in favor of breadth. I think that for dev, I would probably rather see a 50-50 split. Just because most of the features and functionality we have is pretty mature, and I'd rather focus on making each of them come to life and to have the experience.
Sorry, Eric, just to clarify, was the 30 was depth in that 70-30 split?
The 30 was depth in that initial split. Yep. What are your thoughts, Tim?
Yeah, I think in general, I like the split, but the question is especially hitting with a very high usage area like single sign-on. A lot of huge enterprises, it can be that, hey, yeah, we have this other sign-on mechanism, ABC. Can you also implement that? Because we have a customer with 50K users, and then we have another standard for this and that, and 10 different types of imports. There, the question is this always breadth or depth? But it's also hard to judge to some extent.
Yeah, I think that I've always viewed breadth as just this taking a category that either doesn't exist or has a, very, very minimal functionality and bringing it to life and investing there, versus taking something like auth. Like, to me, the auth work is actually depth work. That's how I would classify it.
So the way that you're thinking about the split makes sense to me, and it also aligns with how I hear our most senior leadership talking about where they want us to focus more on depth. It's in our most stable, most used areas, which is, that's dev. So I'm excited to hear that we're going to be giving more focus to depth.
Cool. Thank you for that. I just made an executive decision here because Christopher's got to leave at the bottom of the hour. So I pulled up your items. Christopher, do you want to voice them over?
Well, thanks. You didn't have to do that, Eric, but since you did, just a couple of observations, one from the CAB and then one on the data science initiative. Kind of relate to the CAB, though. I was kind of thinking the same thing prior to that, which is you mentioned investment in data science, but like one thing that we don't really think about is, time series processing. From that perspective, we don't have an architecture right now that really supports it as well as we should. Should we be considering something like that more formally here in this particular section?
I think the answer to that is yes, because I think it's going to take us a while to, one, build that team, and also start to build that architecture that you're mentioning.
Okay.
So yes. What do you think?
I think so. We have to somehow incorporate that into the roadmap. It's not like a formal feature per se, but it is a way for us to like hook in for ecosystems and other things, right? So I have a feeling this is based on customer demand that we're gonna have to think in these terms.
Yeah, the data science team, we had kind of mentioned we're not doing recommendations and some of the AI and ML stuff in terms of making our users more efficient throughout the application. In order to do that the right way, I think we do need to invest into data science. I think Gabe and I have talked, there's a large opportunity in plan, just particularly around data science. So yep, agreed. Christopher, maybe the right next step there is for us to iterate on the fiscal year 21 plan to figure out how we incorporate it there.
Okay, that sounds reasonable to me. It's just the one thing we'll want to make sure is that somehow we bubble it up on this page, because right now it's not crisp in my head how it's a one-to-one map, and I'm sure someone will ask that question at some point, but that makes sense. Cool. And then the other thing was there's this, like, there was feedback during the cabinet. I'm trying to figure out how to best articulate it, which was, people want to get information presented to them where it's kind of like the best laid plans are great until you start executing on the plan. And, in particular, like a good example is one company we talked to, they were basically saying that, they would acquire companies and they would be in various states. So because of that, they would either create them under the grouping or not, depending on what state they were in, and bringing them up to snuff. So because of that, for a lot of executives, it's really hard to either get metric information or even management, for like cross-functional project management done easily. And I wondered if I missed it or if that is even a consideration at this point. So kind of the idea is like a virtual group.
Yeah, I think this is the concept of workspaces that the team's been kicking around. It's not in the plan, and we should add that.
Okay. Yeah, even if it's, we're not planning to get to this, but it's on the roadmap, I think it's important for us to kind of be thinking about it. Okay, cool. Thanks.
Document how they were thinking about that directionally. Yeah, I like that a lot. Thank you for that.
No problem. Tim, it's back to you.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, the next point is mainly a lot of discussion points that I would love to hear your thoughts, and also, of course, also the thoughts of all the other members available on the call, which is, yeah, we have definitely what was already anyhow said was we have an area that has a huge adoption and a usage rate. I think that's definitely a strength. I would say, especially introducing new features, because other areas have already a hard time to actually get users to adopt that area and get them started on monitoring, etc., to actually connect their infrastructure. Then I think one of the biggest weaknesses, and I would love to hear the input of product, is I think we have huge potential, but we have even bigger potential that is not taken, that people don't use because they don't get the full overview of what you can do with GitLab right now. I always bring the classic example of DigitalOcean articles, which is you enter in Google Ubuntu firewall password WordPress, and you get immediately an article from DigitalOcean how to do that stuff on DigitalOcean on that server. And I think we have a documentation in place, and I know that we are diving a lot into like highlighting things, but especially enabling customers to see, hey, by the way, if you click here, then you can enable this and that review app types, and you're just in reality missing that configuration type. So I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Personally, I view that as the primary responsibility of the growth team, of the growth section. The growth section charter has always been to connect users better with the value that the kind of the other sections create, so to speak. So that's my initial reaction to it, which would be I would rather this team focus on building amazing features that solve huge problems for our customers, and I would like the growth team to focus on better connecting those features together in terms of discoverability and pop-ups that say, hey, it looks like you're not using review apps. Like, why don't you use a review app? Did you know you could even do that? That's how I've always seen it structured. I think that's how we were structured organizationally. What's your reaction to that, Tim?
Very good point about the growth. The question is, can they basically put something at the end in there as an experiment rather than thinking it through already from the beginning, especially with UX? And I think Christy would also be a candidate to say something about it, but having like already like in the thinking of how a feature will be used, that we already get that started at the beginning of the whole product development, which also goes hand in hand with my next point, which is I think that, by the way, sorry, I didn't mention that I really like the roadmap, and I'm really curious how much we can pull off and even more. But I think we have a huge USP, which is not only that we have everything in one solution, but so that you don't need to go through different solutions, but rather that we have one solution where we can also connect the different areas, that you can see monitoring results in a merge request, that you could see a lot of CI/CD topics are a huge part of the merge request, etc. So I would love to hear exactly that type of USP a little bit more around how we can interconnect the different areas, and that comes again to the whole point of should we already get started about thinking, connecting these, and making the user aware of how to do things in the first place.
Okay, and just so I'm clear on the acronym, USP is unique selling point?
Yes, sorry.
No worries.
This is Gabe. I was just going to chime in. I think one of the areas that there's going to be a lot of overlap over the next year is especially as we look at value stream reporting. One of the things from CAB that came out is a lot of the customers want visibility and metrics, into monitoring, but also into, is DevOps working for us, and, where are we slow, where are we fast, are we improving, and just getting that kind of feedback. And when you look at the kind of the life cycle of an issue and how that connects to merge requests and tying that into like a workflow that then has like value stream reporting on it, so you can see end to end from like idea to something getting implemented, and then even after that, like what happens to a feature once it's live. I think there's going to be like a whole lot of value there, and then also it would be cool to be more proactive in surfacing issues, like from monitoring or from other sources within the product, so that people are paying attention to these things, and we help them do that. But I do agree, the more that we can integrate the different stages together and have them overlap with one another, then the real value of GitLab as a single application for the entire DevOps lifecycle, it will just like elevate it even more, and because you don't have to do integrations, which is a really cool thing. So I agree with that point too.
I think my only feedback, Tim, is I couldn't agree more to your point. And so I'll just take an action to add these as opportunities and ensure we have the issues. I think we do need to think a little bit more around how the whole product integrates together. I know that Christy's done a lot of work on, what are they called now? UX report cards?
Yeah, the UX scorecards, and we are trying to make those broader workflows because they have been pretty feature specific in the past. But I agree. I'm super excited to see us do more of this. I think this is our primary business opportunity.
I like your point on dog fooding, Tim. That's a huge opportunity that we have. So I'll add that in there.
Cool.
Cool.
Awesome. Then I jump simply to the threats. This is a classic topic of how do you do strategy and investment. Is always like, in my sense, is the investment to outcome rate good enough? So is, for example, something that I'm still thinking about is it really just a great thought that sounds great to have the web ID work with the GDK in the end? Or is it really something that not only we would need, or if even our engineers would need this and use that? And on the other hand, how much input do we need? How much do we need? Okay, we need a bigger IDE for this. We need to get runners with Docker containers, and we need to do connections there and setups. And then you have on top of that, engineers love customizing their stuff. So I know everyone just look at the different technology calls. There is still the JetBrains people, there are VS Code people, the Vim, Emacs, and with tons of customizations. How do you get there? So that the separation between where do we want to get there and doing a huge investment for something that sounds nice on paper. I think this is one of the biggest threats that I currently see. How do you see that in the whole round? I see 23 people on the call, so please speak up if you have thoughts.
Yeah, I have just a few thoughts to kind of level set, and then I would love to hear other people's thoughts here too. In general, I want to do a better job of measuring that ratio of investment into outcomes. The only way to do that is to be able to actually measure the outcome, which we've been a little bit blind to do at this point in time. Pendo is going to help with this a lot by giving our PMs analytics kind of at their fingertips, and that's happening very, very soon. Now, this will only be on .com, so it's going to be kind of proxy metrics, but we should be able to understand who's using new features that we release. Right now, we're very blind to this. I mean, basically, whatever we get off of Snowplow and usage ping combined is what we know about the product, and it's not a great understanding of it. The other way to typically measure outcomes is based off of revenue, which is difficult for us to measure on a feature or stage basis, just because we are sold as a single product with a single license model. But I would like to get better at this in general. I'm not using these as excuses to not push this area forward. I do think that we should continue to do that. I also think that the new problem validation process will help us here a lot. We should not be shipping things anymore that don't have very clear problems associated with the solutions and the work that we're asking engineering to do. I've thrown the GDK out here as an idea. Personally, it would solve a big problem for me. I don't think that devs are the persona, as Christy wrote here, for this one. It just seemed like one of those cool things to do based off of our mission of everyone can contribute. And right now, it's not really true. Not everyone can contribute back to GitLab because it takes so long to set up the GDK. And it just seemed like one of those interesting integration points that if we actually did invest into the Web IDE, we could make that a thing, especially if we went down like a container path. But once again, I do think it is a solution without a super crisp problem statement. And I just mentioned I don't want to prioritize or do those things anymore. So we will definitely do that work before we kind of invest into this type of work. We also haven't done any sizing exercises. I'm not even sure if this is this a two month or 3 month project, or is this like a 2-year project? And if it's the latter, then I can tell you that we're probably not going to invest into invest the time there as well. So lots of kind of unknowns here. This is kind of why it's a directional plan, not necessarily a very tactical, this is what we're doing in the next 3 months and by issue. That make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I like, Tim, that you're thinking about return on investment. And you're right, Eric, that that's something that we haven't done a great job of analyzing in the past, but I also agree that the new problem validation process is really meant to speak to this. So with the quantitative, we have to go in and actually develop these features before we can start gathering data to know whether or not they're working. But a lot of this stuff we can figure out before we ever write a single line of code, and that's just so much less expensive to do it that way. So I'm glad we're thinking about both. That's not to negate the value of data, it's just to make sure that we're balancing both things.
And I would love to give some background to how we actually arrived at the current vision of the Web IDE, because we ran a first UX research study, and we ran that with 5 very technical people. And of these 5, only 3 of them were able to add a file, change a file, and then make a successful commit and start a new merge request. If only 3 technical people of 5 were able to do that, I don't even want to look into the numbers for non-technical people. So it's already very challenging to use the Web IDE in its current state, because it originated from the vision that everyone should contribute. But over time, it just got more and more complex because we pushed more and more features, more and more functionality in there. And so it's already at a state where it's really tough for new users that are not very technical to contribute. So we wanted to scale back on the current version of the Web IDE to make it really quick, simple, easy to use, so that everybody can use it. And because we also saw a lot of technical barriers in Theia, or in the current version of the Web IDE regarding, for example, server-side evaluation, we looked at alternatives like Theia that would allow us to make a split between the current version of the Web IDE that could become the new way of editing that could replace the ACE editor, while also already having a plan for having a more developer-focused IDE in place, so that all these great ideas like live sharing, like server-side evaluation, we know we could enable this with Theia, but we want to focus on really making a quick, simple, great editor experience for everyone.
Yeah, Kai, do you want to quickly respond with a thought?
Yeah, I mean, just like specifically to the Web IDE thing and making bad investments. I'll agree that the data is not there, and I think I don't want to say it's one of the reasons it's stalled out. There's a bunch of reasons that like there's not been a ton of progress on that lately, but I think that in terms of the Web IDE, there's 2 things. One is the run the GDK, and which is, I would say, a very aspirational, very GitLab-y goal to have, only because I would argue that we probably use the GDK more than like external people, right? With most of our engineering team. And so it's one of those like very tangible things that you can easily wrap your head around as like an end game solution, right? It's very easy for me to say, I want to run the GDK in a web-based editor because that translates well internally. It translates pretty well externally. And there's like an actual outcome that you could expect. I think really what we're talking about when we say that is, we want people to be able to deploy their applications inside of like the IDE to do things. And there's a lot of valid, very valid use cases out there for that beyond the GDK, which are things like security releases and dependencies and other things like that, where you actually need environments that are very different than your what you might be running locally. Or when you're trying to work with someone else's feature branch, right? You know, one of the things that our engineers even have an issue with is switching branches in the GDK can sometimes cause some problems just because you have to like stash your changes before you do that and check out the new branches and hope that all of that comes back, right? And so what we're really talking about is like, yeah, it'd be great to run the GDK, but there's a lot of use cases for more ephemeral development environments that are useful for kind of these less common tasks. And I think that's where like that GDK aspiration goes to. And I think that's where the web IDE, when we think about like the technical engineering personas, that's what we're thinking of as these maybe not primary editing experiences, although we have heard from people that use other online terminals. And I think if you look at the market, you see VS Code Online is coming at some point. So Microsoft is clearly paying attention to this space. Amazon bought Cloud9 for an online IDE, not that they've done much with it, but clearly, at least at the hyperscale cloud level, they are paying attention to it, right? And I think we'd be naive to think that Azure DevOps won't include VS Code Online at some point in the future. And so I think it's just an important part of making sure that we're not reacting to that happening, that we're leading that happening when that change comes. And then there's this whole host of other things around what happens to the existing web IDE and editing experiences. And I think there's a very engineering focused editing experience, and there has to be complementary to that, there needs to be an editing experience that is very tailored to non-technical users. That's, multi-file editor, whatever that is. And then there's some other things in the works, and Eric's got a MR actually sitting for this page to add another block about another kind of like non-technical editing experience that we're thinking about that I was typing up during the first half of this. So I think there's other things that we're thinking about on the non-technical side of this as well to solve problems and opportunities that exist out there. But yeah, I agree. I think, there's lots of times where we make investments in things that aren't right. And the problem validation thing is going to be great. And more data when Pindo comes around is going to be great too.
Kai, the way you just positioned that was really, really powerful. I kind of want us to go like back at some point and look at it in the video. But we started off by talking about the web-based GDK in a really feature-focused way, and you really brought it around to a value focus. And I think changing the language in the vision document to match what you were just saying would be a really, really good change.
Cool. We can definitely do that. Thanks. All right. Let's in essence of time, let's keep going. Tim, you've got number 6.
That's what I also wanted to say. But we can also jump to other people. I don't want to take up all the time. Language-specific features. I think right now, and this might be that is coming back exactly also to the web IDE. The web IDE is a huge technical problem to solve, and currently, as you mentioned, also VS Code is currently doubling down on making VS Code remote execution, remote development, so that you develop from your local system against an online system. So coming back to that is around the language-specific features is really the topic. Currently, we only know that this is either a text or a binary. We know to some extent, okay, this is that type of language. We have a very, very minimal understanding of things. So my question is, what do you think about language-specific stuff? So doubling down on specific languages. Let's take Java, .NET, JavaScript, and Ruby, as we are coming from that background, and really invest more also in tools that are merge request specific around the topic, that are more specific around specific build parts that is not directly dev, but that could be something interesting in the merge request, for example. Webpack setups are a huge topic in front-end development to see actually how your whole Webpack setup is working in a merge request and things like that. So what's your stance there?
I think that all sounds good. Let's maybe flesh out the code review bullet a little bit more with some of those things that you just mentioned.
Cool.
I'd like to talk about number 7, Tim, if you want to.
Yes. performance issues. So it was mentioned a little bit in there that they come from new features and code, but most of the time the performance issues they can be through simply changes. They can be that two things together have a complete different outcome than before. They can be inflicted by something else. That's why we are doing limits. But I wouldn't say that we degrade performance by adding new features in a one-to-one relationship. That's the highlight I wanted to mention there. Does that make sense?
I think there is a little nuance there where, specifically to the merge request page, which you talked about earlier, the merge request page is kind of like owned by the source code group, but it's like the entry point for a lot of other groups as well. So like, you know, we have CI information there, we have review app information there, we have security scan information there. And depending on how you slice that, I think that can be a case where adding more features does slow it down, just because we're adding a bunch of stuff to the merge request page, and particularly the widgets. So I don't think it happens so much for the plan stage, but certainly for the create source codes group, that's definitely a thing that can happen.
Yeah, I would add that I agree to that as a principle, Tim. I would just add that if we're adding new features, that's time that could have been dedicated to improve performance, because some of the performance work is diving deep on performance and profiling and improving small things that take time or take longer time to just develop the feature. So in that sense, it does kind of is a trade-off, but I do agree that it's not necessarily associated with one another.
Tim, do you think we need to change language on the page to highlight your point of ensuring we don't reduce performance every time we launch a new feature?
Yeah, I think it needs some addition simply in the sense of, rather, okay, we want to invest in performance. We believe that performance is key to a good application experience, but widen it where it's coming from. There are so many reasons I've seen that at GitLab why bad performance is happening, and I've seen almost everything. So I wouldn't put it simply in that the language to me currently says, okay, this is a one-to-one relationship because we are adding new features, our performance is going down, and that's why we are trying to fix it. But I would rather say let's put performance first, let's improve it there, and let's make it as robust as possible, which is simply coming from this availability. And yeah, I would simply add that was more about language changes. I love to work on performance, and I love to have an application that really is as robust as possible and reacts on all ends, just starting and looking at an issue. If you change something at the bottom, it doesn't update at the top, etc., etc. And there we need to invest and improve a lot.
Great. Let's add some language to the page on that. Yeah, we can absolutely disseminate this out to all dev team members. I mean, it's a public page; they could easily find it. I'll send out a note to the broader teams to highlight that it's here.
And I will also that all the EMs are basically radiating it, and we radiate it again in staff meetings simply to highlight it, because I think a vision page can be simply also a huge boost for the team on simply in sense, okay, that's what we are building, and then not just changing the color on the tooltip right now. Changing the color of the tooltip is basically bringing the product forward to actually reach those goals along the line.
Thanks for that.
Yeah, so, and I feel really bad about taking up all the whole thing, so I'm rather moving my team dashboards down and jump in the rest of the topics. Otherwise, I have a bad feeling.
No worries. I responded async to some of them, but Sean, I think your point's great. So do you want to voice it over?
Yeah, thanks. I think your response is good, but let's get it on the video as well. So for manage, one of the items we have is a great import experience, and for plan we have an item that says importing from Jira without losing required data, which seems like there's some overlap, but I think you've got great answers to this, so go ahead.
Yeah, I just view the manage team as kind of owning the one-time experience of getting it into the application, and I view the plan team as the primary DRI for making all of the features available in order for them to actually import, into Jira.
Right. So if we didn't like support issue comments, for instance, like obviously we couldn't import comments from Jira, and that wouldn't work.
Exactly. And if the managed team is ever blocked by any of that, I would expect them to just start to contribute into the plan features like we do all the time, right? This is the beauty of having our organization set up as it is. So yes, I do think there is a little bit of overlap. I'm totally okay with that. And that's kind of how I see it working. And then, yeah, Kai's question, so how does enablement fit in? Aren't they focused on the Jira integration? They are focused on the integration. So if someone wanted to use Jira issue tracking with source code management and CI, yes, that would be something the ecosystem team would own. The import team is focused on importing.
But is the plan team focused on
the plan team
parity? I guess, like feature parity is what I got from what Eric said.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Cool. Pedro, you've got the next one.
Yeah, I mean, you answered all of them, async. I don't think it's worth voicing any of them. They're more clarifications than anything. I mean, I think the first one might be interesting if other people want to contribute as well.
I think we should talk about it. I think they're all interesting questions, and I added super pithy answers too.
Sure. Yeah, so the first one is regarding the inclusion of frameworks to help product managers prioritize decisions and also return on investment analysis and measurement. And there are so many different ways and frameworks or approaches that product people have in their teams and companies. How are we going to approach this, with a one-size-fits-all, or allow them to customize the frameworks? Will it be a balance? And ultimately, where do we draw the line?
Yeah, and for those not able to actually see the document, I just wrote, I'm not sure yet. And I really am not sure. We've tried to standardize internally on something like the RICE prioritization framework. I think a few PPMs have picked it up. Not all of them have picked it up. Then we've introduced the new product development flow. I think honestly, internally, we still have a bit more to go in terms of just our own product management maturity. So to kind of put out this blanket, like, are we standardizing on everything? It's probably a good idea to evaluate if that makes sense, but we're definitely not there. Now, in terms of building it into the product, as I mentioned, like project management morphing into product management, I'm also not sure. I think we probably need to have a balance of flexibility and opinion into it. For example, I would, as a product manager, I would like to see product analytics on some sort of feature object or product object if I was going to actually manage my feature lifecycle through GitLab. And I can tell you that we are not going to build a product analytics tool in the next 12-24 months that could replace something like an Amplitude or Mixpanel or something along those lines. So yeah, I would like to see some sort of ability to customize and pull in analytics there. Gabe, you've got a thought? You want to verbalize that?
Yeah, I was just saying that in terms of like planning and how teams plan, all the methodologies kind of fall into either like a time box where what we do, where we have releases and sprints, or continuous, where you kind of like Kanban, where you don't really have set time boxes, you just work in a continuous flow. Determining ROI is a lot harder, and as I've talked to companies, they all do it in a different way, and or they can't even articulate how they do it. So like, and I spoke with some analysts as well, and the sentiment was the same, is that companies don't know how to do this. So like, it's going to be it's a goal that I have, and I think we should have and strive for, but it's also really complex and abstract. And so it's going to take some time to figure out, but I don't think a one size fits all approach will work, period. But we also don't want to go to the other extreme where everything is customizable, because then it gets really messy. So it'll be an interesting problem to solve.
Cool, thanks. Yeah,
I know that's not a super great answer, Pedro, but
Yeah,
Well,
no, but it's,
we'll have to figure that
the
out.
answer that we can give today, and it's a difficult problem to solve. It's also, I think, similar to the custom workflows and the enterprise and digital transformation aspects that you mentioned in that doc. Yeah, and my next question is regarding the no-code workflows, because that's something that we highlight somewhere in the doc. I think it's in the next
few years, kind of hey, this is where the
years.
market's going. Yep.
Yeah, and all of the other points, I can go back to certain features or goals that we have in other parts of the doc, but the no code, I only see these two mentions here.
Yeah, I actually just added that recently in the last either 24, 48 hours. And I did it on the heels of an analyst conversation that this particular analyst was completely sold out that no code is kind of the future and is going to enable, the next wave of startups and the next wave of essentially application building. I don't disagree, but the skeptic in me is wondering, how prevalent will it get, and how soon will it take over? It seems useful for kind of B2C apps or direct to consumer applications that are simple things that you might do on your phone, but I think it's a little bit unproven. So yes, we can add more information when we have it. I think we're still trying to develop it, but we wanted to call it out as, GitLab is seen as the market leader for kind of code development. And so it would be not great if we missed a giant shift in application development moving to either low or no code. And so I just wanted to throw it out there, and we're continuing to investigate it.
Cool, thank you.
I think, there's also, just to throw one more thought out there too, like making the code either development or review experience more visual in general is probably a good thing. And so I think Firebase is a template out there that a lot of Y Combinator startups are using that I've heard about. That's more of like a visual code builder. It's not necessarily a no code builder, but it's much more visual of experience than we provide. That's also something that this could morph into as like a halfway step between the two. Just thoughts right now, but yeah, hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah. Maybe that's something, what you just said, like the visual parts, I don't know, maybe that's something that can add a bit more structure to those points. Because they're a bit, I mean, at least for me, I have the possibility of talking with you now, but for people that read this, they seem a bit, I think they're missing some anchors or some links somewhere else, maybe.
Yep.
Or just saying we don't know yet to be decided.
Yeah, just be transparent and call it what it is. I like that. I will. Yeah. We'll do that.
Cool. Thanks.
And I think we're out of time. We've got 1 minute till, so I'm going to call it here. And I'll attempt to just answer everything async. And if the PMs could jump in as you already are, that would be great as well. Thank you all so much for a great review. I'm really appreciative of the questions. Take care. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Eric. Take care.